It's only over the past year or so that I've discovered the top-down action RPG. This is a breed of game made famous by the Diablo series, in covering settings as varied as Greek mythology, science fiction, and the Marvel Comics universe. In the year 2000, just a few short months before the release of Diablo 2, Westwood Studios gave us Nox, an example of the genre that, despite being excellent, does get overlooked rather too often. This might have something to do with coming out a bit too close to arguably one of the most important games of this type. So let's take the time now and give Nox its due. The game is set in the fantasy realm of Nox, a land enjoying a few decades of peace and quiet following the defeat of the evil race of necromancers and the trapping of their souls in a magical orb. To prevent them ever escaping, the archwizard Horvath banishes the orb to another place and time. Unfortunately for your character Jack, that time is the late 20th century and the place is sitting on top of his TV. When Hecuba, the last of the necromancers, summons the orb back to Nox, Jack is accidentally brought along too, and in order to get home he has to lend a hand and put a stop to the undead uprising. So Nox, an action RPG with a fantasy setting viewed from a top-down perspective. So far, so familiar. However, unlike pretty much every other game like it, Nox isn't completely controlled by clicking the left mouse button. To move your character, you hold down the right mouse button, allowing you to change between walking and running depending on how far away from him you move the cursor. Regular attacks are controlled with the left mouse button, and spells and magical abilities are assigned to a number of hotkeys. This separation of the movement and combat controls makes the game feel a bit more actiony, since attacking enemies requires a little bit more than just clicking on them. On the other hand, the RPG aspect of the game is much simpler than you might expect. Stats improve automatically when you level up, so the only actual roleplay element comes at the start of the game when you choose between the three classes. Thus, if you're not really into all the stat tweaking of RPGs and just want to get to the action part of these games, Nox is probably the perfect place for you to start. Of the three classes, warriors are of course the strongest and can use almost all the weapons an army can find. Wizards have access to the widest range of spells and magical abilities, and conjurers have the ability to charm creatures to fight for them, as well as being able to use bows and crossbows. As well as offering different strengths and weaknesses, the three classes actually have completely different quests and storylines, so whilst they may visit the same locations every now and again, for the most part choosing a different class will give you a completely new game to play through. Of course, a big part of these games is the loot. Nox does have its fair share of clothes, weapons and armour to pick up, but it doesn't seem to be randomly generated, so you actually only get the best items by exploring and finding hidden areas, of which there are many. The low discovery rate doesn't have that addictive quality that loot-heavy games like Titan Quest have, but does give you a nice feeling when you find one of the secrets. One of Nox's main weaknesses when it was released was that there was no way of playing through the story mode with your friends. On the other hand, it did come with a pretty robust competitive multiplayer which borrowed heavily from first-person shooter conventions with game types like Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what it was like because the servers have long since been shut down. Later on, Westwood also patched the game to include a cooperative quest mode for people looking to team up. It's actually pretty fun even on your own, being quite similar to Gauntlet with its enemy generators and limited life system. In terms of graphics, the game has aged extremely well. The levels are bright, colourful and full of detail, and the line of sight shadow effects are still very impressive today. The presentation is top notch too, with some great voiceovers and the wonderful hand-painted illustrations that mark the beginnings of chapters and the game over screen. The game has a very cohesive feel to it that makes what could have been a very generic swords and sorcery theme much more appealing. Even the title screen is cool with its particle effects and D&D dice style buttons. So, is Nox still worth playing today? For fans of PC action RPGs, this is a game that should not be passed over. Whilst it doesn't have the innate replayability of some of its rivals, the three distinct campaigns and arcadey quest modes should make it more than worth the meagre investment. Nox is far more than just a Diablo clone. It's an interesting take on a fairly static genre and a very played out setting. And few before or since have made the dungeon hacks so accessible without compromising the gameplay, style or humour. Thumbs up.
Can you take me home? Tina made bacon tonight.
Bacon-bound we go, imp. But first, I need your help with something.